Now we're beginning chapter 18, which in many ways begins phase 2 of the Tanya's explanation and guidance. Until now, the first 17 chapters were phase 1. What is phase 1? What is phase 2? What is all about? And today's class is more of an introduction into phase 2. So recall that the whole Tanya is predicated on explaining to you one verse from the Torah. And the Torah says, Ki karov elecha davar me'od, because attaching yourself to God and achieving mastery over your life in terms of being a holy person, living a holy life, is very near to you. It's accessible. It's very doable and possible. In all of your garments, starting from your heart, the expressions of your heart, the emotions, to your thoughts, to your mouth, and to your words. Now, let's quickly review the 17 chapters that we learned till now. The Alter Rebbe laid down the groundwork of informing us about the 3 different kinds of people: the tzaddik, the perfect person; the rasha, the sinner; and the benoni, the someone in between, the intermediary level. And he explained to us the dynamics, the spiritual makeup of everyone's life. We all have 2 souls: the godly soul and the animal soul. These are not just inclinations and impulses, but these are complete souls. Each one is a persona for itself, with a mind and a heart and opinions and agendas and goals and purposes. And we know what the godly soul wants. He wants to overtake. He wants to be able to control the entire territory of the person's body, from the person's mind and their thoughts and their feelings and their attractions, and then their actual deeds and their words. And the animal soul wants to do the same. And there's a battle going on within all the time, trying to seize, take over, take control of our bodies and our faculties. Now, the tzaddik was somebody who succeeded in completely eradicating the animal soul, whether it's destroying it, whether it's transforming it. Different kinds of tzaddikim, they no longer have any force within them that is trying to distract them away from truth, from serving God. And therefore, their life has become an easy life, one of spiritual bliss, inner peace, always thinking, desiring, and doing the right thing. The rasha is someone who's fallen trapped, being taken over, taken control by the animal soul. And it fills their heart. Their heart stimulates them in distracting ways with attractions and desires that are inappropriate. And that obviously seizes the mind to be able to justify it, and the mind to rationalize it. And that takes over a person, and he becomes the life of the sinner. The benoni is the person who has no control over their inner faculties of their mind and their heart and their feelings, but has full control over their behavior. A benoni never actually sins, although within them there's a strong, powerful force of the animal soul. How can a person achieve that? If we haven't transformed our souls from within, how can we ensure that we're always perfect in our thoughts, our words, and behavior, that it's always doing the right thing, doing a mitzvah? That's the benoni, which is what everyone can and should be, which what the whole Tanya is dedicated towards explaining us. So briefly, in these last few chapters, the Alter Rebbe explained to us how it is very possible, very accessible, very achievable, but not so easy. We call it the longer path. Because a benoni, to be the benoni, you have to tap into the natural principle, the natural trait of every human being, which is mind rules over the heart. Even if your heart is filled with desires, passions, attractions of the animal soul, but the mind rules the heart. And so it's possible, if you access your mind properly, which means you have the vigilance, the sensibility, the focus, the ability, the awareness to, in your mind, pursue the study, the contemplation, the meditation about the Torah and about God and about faith and about that which is true and real and important. If you do that right, then automatically those convictions and those thoughts of the mind spill over and influence the heart. And even if the heart naturally wants to go elsewhere, but the mind will influence the heart, and the heart will become aroused with feelings, with emotions, with love, with attractions, with desires, with passions towards what the mind has concluded is good and is real and is important and beneficial. And then with those arousals of the heart, that influences your behavior as well. What if we discuss the person doesn't have the ability to have such arousals of the heart? They're not so emotionally inclined. Well, we said every person can achieve emotions of the mind, which means the objective intellectual contemplation will always result in a kind of intellectual conviction and inclination. And those are called the emotions of the mind. And that too is enough to stimulate the heart, perhaps not in such a emotionally expressive way, but sufficient enough to cause a person, to stimulate and inspire a person to behave properly and to always be doing the right thing in their thoughts, words, and behaviors, because of the convictions, because of the inclinations of their intellectual contemplations and meditations. And therefore, the Alter Rebbe concluded, it is karov, it is easy, fairly easy, it's for sure accessible and achievable for every person to be in full control over themselves. How? Through accessing the mind. Now, this already, you can tell, is indicative of the very school of Chassidut known as Chabad. Chabad, which was the Alter Rebbe founded. Chabad is the intellectual path of spiritual life versus many other Hasidic paths that did not endorse or promote so much the Chabad, the intellectual Chachma bin Adat component. In other words, the Alter Rebbe includes of the opinion that if you want to achieve genuine connection with Hashem, genuine relationship with God, it has to begin in the mind. You have to connect with the ideas, because the mind is the most powerful organ. And when you connect with those ideas, that will influence your heart and your behavior as well. Other schools of thought were wary of the mind, but the mind is a risky place to go to. Where will it really take you? And therefore, they promoted accessing the heart directly, excite the heart, get the heart excited and inspired. And now the Rebbe challenges that. He challenges that because, number one, the heart has a mind of its own, and it's not very a trustworthy organ. It's a powerful organ, but it needs the guidance of the mind. And number two, an inspiration of the heart without the guidance and the influence of the conviction of the mind is never 100% genuine. It could be fleeting. It's not so real and substantial. And that was the path of the Tanya and of Chabad Chassidut. Now, up until this point, until chapter 17, last chapter. Chapter 18, the Alter Rebbe discusses and raises a question. What if, however, this too won't work for you? Because the verse says, Ki karov alecha davar me'od. It is not only accessible and achievable for everybody, but it's ma'od. It's very easy. It's very accessible. It's very possible for everybody to achieve this level of mastery of the Beinoni. Very? Really? What if you're somebody that you don't have such an intellectual ability to study, to understand, to contemplate, to meditate, to be able to fill your mind in all of its breadth and its depth and its length, all the layers of your mind, with a true intellectual appreciation for God and for Torah and for faith. Maybe your mind is not capable of that. You don't have that ability. And if you don't have that ability, then you seem to be missing out on the most important component that is required for mastery of mind, of a heart, which leads to the performance of good deeds all the time, which is the essential for the Beinoni, as we discussed. What if you can't achieve that? How do we make it karov me'od? Still a simple, accessible achievement for you. So now the Alter Rebbe introduces another path, a more easier path, a shorter path than the previous few chapters. This path is based on not the activation of the mind so much, because someone's not capable of that, but it's more about discovery of the natural talents, the natural faith, the natural love, the natural emotions and connections a person has in their heart to God. It's called ahava mesoteret, the hidden natural love that is born, that is innate inside every single person's soul from the day they're born. In other words, previously it was about working hard to activate the mind, to influence the heart, and now it's about discovering what naturally already exists over there. Which, by the way, these two paths, it's interesting. There's a famous question, and the question is as follows. The Torah commands us with many mitzvot, and most of the mitzvot are commanding about our behavior, instructing us how to conduct ourselves. Do this and don't do that. There are some mitzvot, however, that instruct us how to feel, They're instructing the emotions. For example, there's a mitzvah, you have to love the Lord your God. Now, the question is, I can be instructed and commanded and obligated to do something because I have full control over my behavior. How am I instructed and obligated to feel a certain way? I don't have control over my feelings. If I tell you, you must eat ice cream, you can achieve that. If I tell you, you must love ice cream, I hope you do, but not everyone does. I can't force you to love a thing or a person. I can just force you to do something for that person. How does the Torah instruct us we must love? So there are typically two answers given to this question. One answer, such as Maimonides gives this answer, is that the command and the obligation is not to love, because we can't force you to love, but the command and the obligation is to think, is to meditate, is to contemplate, is to study. And if you do that right in the mind, well, that will naturally influence the heart, and then you will love. So you're guaranteed to love God if you fulfill the command of studying and learning about God. That is one answer. Another answer that other commentaries bring is the reason why the Torah can command and obligate you to love God is because you don't have to create that love within yourself. You're born with it. It's natural. It's innate in your soul, perhaps hidden. And the command is just to discover and uncover what's already there in your soul. So these two answers to that question really are the two paths of the Tanya that's being laid out in front of us. The first path was like Maimonides, the obligation to use the mind to exercise and control over our behaviors. And the second path is discovering the hidden faith, the hidden love within our hearts and our souls naturally when we're born. And for the rest of today's class, the Alter Rebbe wants to introduce more about this and understand. And he asks, what is the source of this natural love, this natural faith within our soul? Where does it come from? What is its nature? What's it all about? How does it in fact indeed lead us to the emotions of the love and the awe of God? Now, the Rebbe tells us, you know where it comes from? You know why every single soul is born guaranteed with this? Because it's a spiritual gift, a spiritual inheritance to us from our matriarchs and our patriarchs, Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, and their wives. The patriarchs of the Jewish people, when we studied the Torah, we learned that they are the progenitors of the Jewish people, but not just physiologically, not just biologically, but also spiritually. Because what was that? Who were they and what were their lives? They were not just great people, righteous people, holy people. They were more than that. The Alter Rebbe quotes from the Kabbalah, from the Zohar, that the Avot, the patriarchs, were Merkava, the status of Merkava, the chariot towards God. We want to explain what's the nature of the chariot. You have the horse rider who wants to get to a certain place. Then you have the horse and the chariot. The horse will obey the horse rider because he's going to whip him if he doesn't obey, but the horse may want to go elsewhere and do something else, but it has to fall into place. The chariot doesn't even have another thought, another agenda where it wants to be. It has no mind or heart. It just follows automatically the will of the horse rider. Similarly, the Avot were on the spiritual level of the chariot towards God. They had no individualistic, separate identity of themselves versus God and the Torah. Whatever God desired, whatever the Torah says, that's who they were. They were completely transparent in that regard. And because of that great elevated spiritual status, they succeeded in passing on a spiritual gene to every single person that is born. And that gene, a spiritual gene, is in your soul, and it gives you the natural hidden love and faith towards God. Where does it come from? What kind of level, spiritual level? How much of this godliness is in your soul? So the Alter Rebbe explains as follows. Every single soul, from the highest to the lowest, are ultimately connected with the highest source of infinite godliness. Even the lowest soul. And here he gives a Kabbalistic classification. What's the lowest soul? So think about this. We studied in chapter 2 that all souls go through a spiritual descent throughout all the worlds and all the spheroid within each world, and they're all influenced by different levels, and that sort of defines the nature of their soul. There are 4 worlds: Atzilut, Bria, Yetzirah, Asiya. Within each world are the 10 Sefirot: Chachma, Bina, Dad, Chesed, Gvur, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, Malchut. So let's talk about the lowest Sefirah of the lowest world, Malchut de Asiya. And in Malchut itself, in every single Sefirah, there's the Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, 3 different levels of that Sefirah. Neshama is the expression of mind, Ruach is the expression of emotions, and Nefesh is the very functional side. So you have these 3 levels within each Sefirah. And then each person is born with a soul, and your soul may be more of a neshama soul, or a ruach soul, or a nefesh soul. It may be a soul that's more gifted and suitable to the intellectual realm, which is the higher level. It may be a soul that's more of an emotional soul, a bit of a lower level. It may be a soul that's a very functional soul, the lowest of levels. The lowest of souls can be described as a soul that's on the level of nefesh, a very functional soul, that comes from the level of nefesh, within the sphere of malchut, within the world of asiyah, the lowest of the lowest of the lowest of the low. Even that soul is still godly, is still bound with the highest of levels of spiritual infinite godliness. Because, and there's a whole Kabbalistic explanation we're not going to go into, that low level in the world of the lowest world is connected with the realm of Chachma. Chachma, which is the highest sphere within that world. And that level of Chachma is connected with the highest of levels of Chachma within the highest sphere and the highest of worlds. There's a natural flow, even though it becomes more and more diminished within each world and each level, but it's still connected with its origin. The point the Alter Rebbe makes is that no matter how low the soul is, it is connected with the highest of levels of Sfirot and worlds, known as Chachma. Chachma is the highest Sfirot within each world, and the highest level of Chachma is in the highest world of Atzilut. Chachma, which we've learned, is the first stage of wisdom, of intellect. It's really the first point of consciousness. Chachma is that first point that is connected with the subconsciousness of a person, that which transcends your consciousness. In the spiritual sense, in the spiritual world, the highest level of Chachma the Atzilut is the first point, the first emergence of an existence that is deeply connected with infinity, with the creative, infinite source of godliness. And so that's an important key to understand for today, to know that every soul, no matter what level it is bound with Chachma, and Chachma is that level that is connected with and a recipient of the infinite level of Ein Sof, of the creative God. And Alter Rebbe adds in brackets, you should know that you can never judge levels of souls. You can't say that higher level families, righteous families draw down higher souls, and lower families draw down lower souls. It's not even true. Sometimes the lowest of spiritually low families, what appears to be, could bring down very high level souls. That's in fact a tactic of the Klipot. The Klipot don't want this high level soul coming into a family where it's going to receive a very big chance to succeed in life, because it's going to threaten the forces of Klippa, bring in too much holiness in this world. And so they capture that soul and they send it into a low level family, which is a family that's not going to be able to, it's probably not going to be able to naturally nurture this soul in a way to achieve its full potential. So that is the introduction today of the new path, which is a very easier path, the natural, innate love and faith in God. We're discovering more about this level in the soul, where it comes from and how it affects you and how you can utilize it in life. God bless you. Have an amazing